Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing well. I've just filmed a video about my trip to Stratford-on-Avon, my thoughts on the theatre productions I saw, and new book topics for the future for this channel. So rather than bore you with all of that again, I'll just very quickly say I had a really good time. It was a break that I desperately needed. I went on so many walks. It was very lovely because I've never been to Stratford in the winter when it's been so quiet, and some places were closed entirely, so you wouldn't be able to go around like New Place and such, but it meant that it was just so much nicer. I mean, not to say that Stratford isn't nice when it's busy, because obviously it's lovely to be around people, but you can expect obviously over the summer it to be a lot more rammed than in the winter when there's places closed and such. It was just so lovely just to have peaceful time. I could go out at like 9 o'clock in the morning and just go for a peaceful walk, or in the middle of the afternoon and have just as peaceful a walk. It was lovely. And I was saying in my other video that because it was quieter, it meant that you could literally at any time of day go to Shakespeare's birthplace and take a picture of it and not have to worry about crowds and crowds of people walking through your shop. It was brilliant. It was bloody freezing, being right on the river. As I said, I've never been there in the winter, and the mist and fog in the morning, oh my god, it was breathtaking. You couldn't there were days where you could not see the other side of the river. It was stunning. It was absolutely beautiful. And having a wander around Holy Trinity Church graveyard, which is it's a beautiful graveyard. I absolutely love it. And I visited there every day in my walks and wandered around and read the graves and such. And it's something that I do. It's just something that I love to do, just to have a look at the past and acknowledge people whose names may have been forgotten. And it was really lovely as well, because there was one in particular where the people who were buried there had passed in the 1800s. I think it was like 1835 or something, and there were fresh flowers there. There were loads of fresh flowers there, so clearly there were family that was still in the area who were leaving flowers for their loved ones, which is beautiful. They've not been forgotten. I think it's important to acknowledge the past, and so I was trying to do that whilst I was there, and I loved it. I had such fun. A couple of theatre trips, outside escape room, lots of walks. It was just everything that I needed, and it was wonderful. But while I was in Stratford, I did some reading, and in less than 24 hours I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, which is what I'm here to talk about. So It Starts With Us is a sequel to It Ends With Us, a book that I absolutely loved when I read it. I think it was a few years ago now. And that book follows Lily and Ryle and their relationship. It's written from first person perspective, and it mainly had the chapters from Lily's point of view, although there was the occasional odd chapter where it was someone else's. And I really loved that book, and especially I adored the character of Atlas. And I was like, I want to know more about Atlas. I need some more about Atlas. And it just so happened that not long after I read that, it was announced that the sequel was being written called It Starts With Us, and it's basically Atlas's point of view. When I read this, it's a half Lily's, half Atlas's. They flick back and forth alternative chapters. And so we would learn more about Atlas, and I was like, yes. And if you saw me when I picked it out of my jar, I was so frigging excited to read this book. And so I started it in Stratford when I had gotten there, and less than 24 hours I had read this entire book. Now, as I said, I was a fan of the original book, and so I was like, okay, let's go. And the very first page, Colleen has said, I didn't anticipate It Ends With Us was going to be this huge hit on TikTok. And so I'm writing this for the fans. The fans really demanded to have a sequel, and so I've written it. So thank you to everyone. Now, I read that and I was like, well, that could be one of two ways. Either it's thank you, I'm really, really excited. I'm writing this as a love letter for you, for you, the fans, or thank you for making this so popular, but I am only writing this because you demanded it, not that I want to. And I contacted my bestie, Sarah. Hey, Sarah. And spoke to her about it because she'd read this literally as soon as it came out. And she, like, with social media and such, I mean, I have a Facebook for obviously my friends, family, and I am on Instagram where I take pictures and basically summarize in text what you see in these videos, but I haven't updated it since I read The Running Grave. So that tells you how long I did, but that's it. I don't do TikTok, I don't do Snapchat, I don't do Twitter/X, none of that. So I don't follow authors really. I just, I'm just not a social media kind of person. So I think probably these videos is the most social media in a way that I do. But Sarah, she follows a lot of authors. She gets involved with book discussions and such that I'm just not involved with. So I asked her about this and she said, no, literally, Colleen, she wrote it because of the demand. It's not basically kind of like, it's not really what she wanted to do, but she just did it for people. And I'm like, okay. I learned that after I finished this book, by the way. So I didn't go into this book knowing that. And as I read it, I was like, okay, I had that inkling. And then getting the confirmation at the end, after I finished it, I was like, right, okay. Now, this starts literally the minute it ends with us, this starts. And it really relies on you having read It Ends With Us, because she doesn't refer back to things that happened in It Ends With Us. She just goes in going, all of that stuff I've already told you. This is the next step. And also Atlas's backstory. Now, Atlas's backstory is so bloody beautiful. Loved it. Loved that. It was the stuff that I craved for when I was reading It Ends With Us, but It Ends With Us is very much from Lily's perspective, so you're not going to get this kind of information. But because this book, as I said, each chapter alternates between Lily and Atlas, it gives the room in order to get that information, and it was important that we got that information. I bloody loved that. But then Colleen did something with Atlas, and if you've read the book, you know what I mean, to do with the restaurants, what happens at the restaurants and what that then goes into. That I was like, why? You didn't need to do that. And it felt really ridiculous kind of to do that. I mean, overall, I get why from a writer's perspective that it gives them room, it gives them an extra bit of story. So while Lily is progressing with stuff with her life, Atlas has got something to progress with his. I totally get that need to have something happen. But why did it have to be that? Why did you have to bring something so out of the blue that it just doesn't make sense? It's silly. It's a silly thing to do. It's where an author literally goes, you know how sometimes where, okay, let's take a TV series. Let's let me think of what show that I can think of. Something like Call the Midwife. Okay, right. Oh yes, Call the Midwife. This is actually a really good example because they have done some stuff over these, the past years that I've had real issue with, but yet I have carried on watching the show even though it should have died years ago, if I'm honest. But that's my opinion. So, Sister Monica Joan. We love Sister Monica Joan. She's been such an interesting comical character to have around over the years. It's been 13 years now, and she's still there. Granted, just so that you're aware, I haven't watched the very series finale of the most recent series here in the UK because it aired and I went to Stratford the next day, so it's on my TV box to watch, but I haven't watched it yet. So for all I know, she might have passed in that episode. I doubt it, but it could have happened. But so I'm going on the motive that she is still alive, if that is, the case. So she's been around for 13 years. She's still going strong. She's still doing this, that, and the other. She's still getting in the laughs and that. But in series, I think it's 2 or 3, she goes missing and they have to file a missing persons report. And she is listed as, she's stated as being well into her 80s. Okay. That's like series 2, maybe 3 at a push, because I can't remember the exact series, but it's early on. It's no further on than 3 that I can remember. So that's why 2 or 3. But so it's been at least 10 years. And she's still referring to her as being like, young and getting involved in these various situations and everything. And I'm like, she should be well into her 90s, nearing 100 by now. And she's still this quite, I say young because in comparison to other, to other people of what her age should be, she is quite sprightly. She walks around, with a cane, all that. This is back in we're going into the 70s now, 1970s. Come on, be fucking realistic. This is ridiculous. It's stupid. It's nonsensical, and they do this with other characters, with other things that they do, and they just do not make any sense. And so it felt like that's how I felt with Atlas, with this new thing, this thing that he has to now deal with, and I'm like, why are you doing it? It just doesn't feel right. You feel stupid. It feels like you've just gone, okay, I need to give him a conflict. Boom, I'll do that, and just go with the first thing that pops into your head. It's just, Also, It Ends With Us, you slowly got to learn things about the characters Lily, Atlas, and Ryle. And especially Ryle and his issues are key in that book. And we see it slowly play out, and then we become more and more knowledgeable to what is going on. And it's like, oh my God, the warning signs, the red flags were right there, and we couldn't see them. That is a sign of great writing. So I was like, hell yeah, that's great. In this one, however, we have a situation where all of this reveal stuff that was happening was on Atlas's side, and it came for me as an information dump. And what I mean by that is that it's not necessarily the thing that I just mentioned about the thing that suddenly appears in his life that he has to handle, even though there is a lot of information that's given in a short space of time for that. What I mean are the diaries. Now, there was a period of time where Lily and Atlas got separated for many, many years, and they didn't get to see each other. And Lily wrote diaries throughout her teenage years and into her adulthood, and she reveals that she still has the diaries. And so she starts reading the diary entries to Atlas, or gives him the physical diaries to read, and then we read those diary entries. The shortest diary entry, I think, was about 5 pages, the longest being around 12. And so we get diary entry after diary entry after diary entry. So you're just literally getting boom, 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 boom. And each entry has multiple things that are being revealed in them to Atlas. So it's just like da 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 da. So I'm like, where was the lovely pacing that happened in It Ends With Us? Where was that beautiful structuring where, like, the red flags and such about relating to Ryle, which were so well written in, some of them very, very bold, she's gone, no, not doing that. You're getting it via the diary entries, and this is how Lily wrote as a teenager, so that's how you're getting it. And it's like, that's really sad. The beautiful aspects of the story of It Ends With Us that you'd expect to run through are just cast aside. And you know what it did make me think of? It made me think of a film adaptation of a book that happens where the writers have gone, okay, we'll use the characters' names and we'll loosely do the same as the book, but we're just going to pretty much do what we want to do. And yeah, that's what this felt like. Like, these characters that I've gotten to know and like and such, they've just kind of been tossed aside for something that just barely resembles them, really. I mean, I did enjoy this book. I sat and read through the whole thing, so it wasn't like I was going, no, and I couldn't carry on, because I could. It just felt like that when I got to the end of it, I felt kind of deflated a bit. Like, I was going to say, like I've been let down, but then saying that means that there's an expectation there. But you could argue that in order for you'd expect the tone It Ends With Us, the expectation of the same writing standard to be in this book, especially as a sequel, and it just wasn't there. It felt like she hadn't written with her whole heart in this. And that's why when I asked Sarah the question and she said, yeah, she basically wrote it because people kept on demanding it, and so she just gave in and wrote it. That she wasn't really into it. She just did it to stop all of the demand because of the TikTok craze over it. That's when I went, and yeah, now I understand why I felt the way I felt, why I was confused. I didn't like also that she did something that authors do from time to time where it just felt like you're better than this, Colleen. You are better than this. And that is where she states the obvious. Now, in order to explain that, I need to reveal a little tiny thing to do with Atlas and his story. So just for like the next minute, I'm going to mention something. So if you don't want to hear it, fast forward a minute. And I've got the clock on my screen so I know now. So Atlas, in the course of the story, it's revealed has a brother, and it shakes him up a lot, and there's a whole lot of stuff that happens. But there is a bit where near the end of the book where his brother has done his homework, and Atlas is very happy and he's very proud of his brother and he's watching him. And then Colleen writes from Atlas's point of view to say, I just realised that the way that I'm looking at him is the way that Lily looks at Emerson, who is her daughter. And I'm like, Colleen, you don't need to write that. We as a reader know exactly what that feeling is. We know that is what Lily does with Emerson, because it's a pride and joy. It's a child in your life, and you've realised that you've done good to them by the things that you've put in place in order to make sure that they become well-rounded individuals. And so you don't need to write that, but she did. And it's like, you wouldn't have done that in the first book. You would not have done that in that first book, but you did. So there we go. That's my 1 minute rant over. So yeah. And also, she made a terrible sin of making one of the main characters a caricature of themselves. And that's the character, I will tell you who it is, but I won't say how she's done that, and that is Ryle. I'm sorry, but she wrote this assuming that the reader has read the first book. We know a lot of shit about Ryle, which we have learned through the first book. And at the end of that first book, he was like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I'm going to be, yada, yada, yada. And then literally she comes into the second one. She goes, no, I'm just going to pretend that kind of didn't happen. And just write him like this. And it just like, oh, for God's sake. For God's sake. I know people can take time to change, but it shouldn't be that the overarching thing of him in this entire book basically means that he needs to do the thing that he promised to do at the end of the first book. He actually said those things. He actually said he was going to improve himself by doing X, Y, Z. And then you've just gone, no, let's kind of just like pretend he didn't say that and just have that statement then that need to be revealed at the end of this second book, what he said at the end of the first book. That is doing dirty to one of your main characters. And I did not like that whatsoever. So, weirdly though, I still like this book, but at the same time, I really am frustrated with it. I think Colleen did wrong by writing this the way that she did. I think she did wrong to her audience. I think she did wrong to her characters. I do love, though, Atlas's backstory. That is the only thing that is holding this whole book together, is the reveal of Atlas's backstory and understanding why he feels the way he feels and why he reacts the way he does in the first book. So if you love Atlas, I would say read the second book to learn all of his, backstory and such. But if you're not that bothered about knowing his backstory and everything, only read the first book. You don't need to read the second book otherwise. And isn't that sad to say? That this book that meant so much because of Colleen's mother's own experience with these things that she wrote about in It Ends With Us, that also exists in It Starts With Us, to have such a connection to that world that she wrote about, and then basically the sequel, she's just thrown the opportunity away. I find that really, really sad. It was a disappointment. It was a disappointment. And the fact that I got through it in less than 24 hours, okay, I was on holiday, but I was still, I was still just reading it like in my hotel room and such of an evening, and in the morning when I woke up and such, and in between things I was doing, it still would have been the same situation if I was working, because it would have been in the mornings when I woke up, in the evenings after work, etc., on my lunch break, that kind of thing. It was very easy to read. I just feel like this book could have been so much more. I was expecting it to be so much more than it was. And it fell flat, unfortunately. So, yeah, I really appreciate all the Atlas backstory stuff. That is the one saving grace of this book. But as I said, if you weren't bothered by Atlas, or, you could live without learning his backstory, only read the first book. But if you really want to learn about Atlas and his backstory, read this one, but be aware that it has problems. So those are my thoughts on It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. Time to ask my usual questions. Would I read this again? For Atlas's backstory alone, yes. For everything else, no. Would I recommend this to anyone? Again, only if they had read It Ends With Us and they really wanted to know Atlas's backstory, else I'd say to them, don't worry about it. There's nothing special here. It's an add-on that really could have been a novella. It really could have been a novella for what the contents actually is. Would I read any more of Colleen Hoover's books? Now, yes, I would, because I've only read It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us from her. I don't know any of her other stories. I don't know if her writing style is different in any other books. So I definitely give her another go. But I think I'd want to read more books in her back catalogue, bibliography, shall I say, of work, rather than more recent stuff, simply because I'm like, if social media, the thing that you're depending on in order to get your books, popular and everything, has meant that when it got popular, you just wrote a book for the hell of it and didn't actually put your heart and soul into it. That makes me worried about her future projects. So I'd rather read something when that pressure was off. So go back through a bibliography, see what work she was producing then when there was no pressure there, and see what the quality is like. So there we go. There are my thoughts on It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. If you read this book, I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. You totally share what you said. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is the fabulous Maureen Lipman's When's It Coming Out? And I say fabulous because I last read it, because I've never actually physically read it. I've listened to the audiobook so many times when I was a teenager in secondary school. So the last time I could have possibly listened to it was when I finished my A-levels when I was 18. And I'm now 37. So it's been a long time. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to read When's It Coming Out by Maureen Lipman. I'm over back with my thoughts for that as soon as I'm done. Right then, guys. Bye.